So Cardlytics is a data and analytics platform. Now, I know a lot of companies say that about themselves, but we think we have something very special. The foundation of our platform is bank transaction data. We get that by partnering with over 1,500 banks across the United States. And when we partner with those banks, we receive every single purchase that every customer has made at that bank. And so the question to ask is, why is that important? We believe there's no better predictor of what somebody is likely to buy in the future than to look at what they've bought in the past. So we can make all marketing much more relevant. And very importantly, we can measure the effectiveness of marketing. We can actually understand, the old adage, 50% of my marketing doesn't work, I just don't know which half. Well, we can tell you very precisely what half because we see all consumer transactions before, during, and after any event that was conducted. So I am one of the two founders, and previous to starting Cardlytics, we were both working in banking. And when we were working in banking, we saw two trends that we thought were really pretty interesting. The first was the fact that consumer payments were becoming digitized. This was, 10 years ago. And because of the growth of things like debit and credit and bill pay, you had a full record of where and how customers were spending money. And frankly, banks were doing very little with that. The second big trend that we saw was the huge increase in online banking, and I would now add to that mobile banking. Most people don't know this, but most Americans go to their online banking or mobile banking site as much as they go to Facebook. They don't spend as much time on it, but it is a very trafficked site. And this was at the time that companies like LinkedIn and Groupon and even Facebook were just starting to take off, and we saw this combination of really amazing data and amazing digital touch points to the consumer, and we thought there's something here. And so that's when we decided to leave our careers in traditional banking and start a business that really tried to innovate within banking. The data that we have is a full record of where and how most customers are spending their money. So our primary focus today is using that to make all marketing more targetable and more measurable. And we think that's a really big idea and a really big business. But when you think about the applications of this data, it's much broader than that. There are applications, for example, in real estate. We can help with store locations. We can help identify where you should close stores, where you should open stores based on where we see consumer transactions moving and migrating. We can help with lending. If you watch somebody's spend behavior, you get a much better understanding of, are they likely moving up in their risk spectrum or down in their risk spectrum based on just how their spend changes. I think there's applications in sports. We can help understand and measure the effectiveness of sports marketing in things like 50, 60,000 people stadiums. So I think there's an awful lot of applications of this data. Today our primary focus is basically advertising. And when I say advertising, I mean all forms of advertising. TV, print, digital, mobile, video, all forms of advertising where we can both help make it more targetable and more measurable. The challenge with big data is a lot of people have big data. It's either not that useful or they don't know what to do with it because it's big data. And so I think the trends that are going to be emerging in the next couple of years is, first of all, who really has first-party data that's special, and how do they figure out how to use it? If you think about what we did, we aggregated banks to help them monetize their very amazing first-party data, which is transaction data. When I think about other industries that have first-party data, I think about travel, I think about cable providers, I think about cell phone providers. So there's a lot of people out there that have very unique, very special first-party data. And I think parties who can figure out how to combine that data and use that data, that's a big part of the challenge. I think the other big part of the challenge is just making the data usable. We have a huge function here at Cardlytics that we call merchant cleaning. The challenge you have with payment data is it comes across the US payment systems many, many different ways. A store like Walmart could literally come across thousands of different ways. And so the ability to sort of clean that and understand this is Walmart so that it's usable is a really big challenge. And I think everybody who has a first-party data or any big data asset has that challenge. And so I think you'll be seeing companies emerge who can help with that, whatever kind of cleaning needs to be done for anybody who's the holder of first-party data. We chose Atlanta for a very specific reason when we decided to start Cardlytics. We obviously took a look at all what I'd call the tier 1 traditional cities that most startups happen in. Obviously San Francisco, but New York, Chicago, Boston. And what we found about those cities is, one, they were very expensive. Two, you were one of a million startups. And it was very hard to sort of cut through the clutter and recruiting was a challenge, space was a challenge. So we quickly said, let's look at what most people would call a tier 2 city. And we looked at all the traditional ones, Austin, Charlotte, Atlanta, obviously. Atlanta and the Southeast quickly rose to the top of our list for a whole bunch of reasons. First of all, there's a lot of really big companies in Atlanta that are very supportive of a lot of really small companies. It's a really unique environment where the relationships we have with companies like Equifax or First Data or TSYS or Home Depot, it's a very supportive environment. I would also say Atlanta is very cheap, which is nice when you're raising your Series A and it's $1.75 million. You could spend that all in real estate in San Francisco, or you could actually spend that on hiring your first 15 people. And Atlanta has a fantastic airport. And when you're in a startup, you're usually doing an awful lot of selling, which means you're on a plane a lot. And it's very easy to get to and from anywhere from Atlanta. So we've been thrilled with the Southeast, both in terms of the infrastructure that it's provided us, as well as in terms of the community support that we have. We have always built Cardlytics with the vision of us being a standalone company for as long as possible. We think we want to control our own destiny. And our objective, therefore, is to become as big as we possibly can and to build out as many products as we possibly can. I do think when we think about the future, we're looking at, obviously, possible IPOs. But more importantly, we're looking at where else can we extend our product suite? How can we get access to more first-party data? How can we do more innovative things? Innovation is messy, but it's a lot of fun. And so we want to keep that focus on still being a very innovative company, even as we grow. And I think that's probably the thing I spend most of my time thinking about and worrying about. It's much easier to innovate when you're a 10-person company than when you're a 400-person company. And soon we're going to be an 800-person company, and so really figuring out how we continue to innovate in that incredibly high growth trajectory that we have is where we're going and a big focus. So one of the things even I didn't understand when we first started building Cardlytics is the fact that we weren't just building a company, we were building an industry. And no one did what we do before us. And so I can't even go out and hire somebody who has 10 years experience in using purchase intelligence as a big data platform, because we were the first to do it and we did it 8 years ago. So I think it's been a really interesting journey for us to both not just figure out how to build a company from scratch, but build an industry from scratch and educate everybody about what it is and why transaction data is really valuable and really important, and the fact that you actually can use it in a safe and protected way. When Scott and I started this company, we knew the data was incredibly valuable. We also knew if we marched into banks and said, just ship us your transaction data so we can go do stuff with it, that we'd get kicked out. So we came up with a value proposition where we use the data to benefit the consumer inside the bank relationship. And we do that by presenting the consumer with targeted offers to help them save money on things they buy every day. And those offers, when they use them, the money is sent directly back into their bank account. And so because of that, the banks trusted us to have access to their data because we created a real value proposition for the consumer. Over time, as we became a very trusted technology partner, they gave us the ability to start thinking about how we could use this data to benefit the same advertisers who were advertising inside the channel with all the other advertising they were doing. But it was a long journey, and it took building up a trusted relationship with banks. I will tell you, when we first marched into banks and said, we have this great idea, we're going to place advertisements inside your online banking and mobile banking channels, most of them told us we were absolutely insane and threw us out. And now, 8 years later, the vast majority of banks out there have some type of merchant-funded program, whether it's Cardlytics or somebody else, where we're presenting targeted offers and advertisements to customers inside their banking channels. So it was definitely a long journey, and it was a journey that took a lot of trust to build up with the banks over time. But once you have their trust, and once your technology is embedded inside their environment in a safe and protected way, you do become sort of the dominant and premier vendor in that particular space. We started the company in 2008, and our revenues that year were zero. We're now in 2016. We have nearly 400 people. While I can't disclose our exact revenue amounts, I can tell you that we are a very big, strong company that is looking to be public at some point when the public markets open up. And our growth rates have been easily 50% year over year. I think it's going to be even stronger than that looking out into the future because we are now extending our product suites at a very, very rapid pace. Fundamentally, we're a B2B company. So we work directly with the banks and with the advertisers, but our focus is to bring a good experience to the consumer. Now, we have to do that through the banks and through the bank channels and through the bank experiences. But we very much want to help customers save money, which if you think back 100 years ago when banks, well, several hundred years ago when banks first got started, that was their objective, was a place where people could put their money and save their money. And I think banks have done a lot of things over the years, but getting back to the fundamental of we're going to help you better spend the money you have and save the money that you have is an important part of the focus that we have with customers every day. And it's because we create that kind of value for customers that we're able to use their data to both benefit the customer, the bank, and the advertiser. So it really is a win-win-win. I would certainly say the Southeast is a very friendly place. There's no question about it. You know, coming from the North, every once in a while that can be a little frustrating when the person in the grocery line in front of you is just going to chit-chat all day long, and that's completely okay here. But generally speaking, that's nice. You know, I happen to know the names of all my neighbors. When I lived in the Northeast, that wasn't always the case. So I think it is a very friendly place, but a very serious place. I do think the Southeast is stereotyped quite a bit. You know, some people here have funny accents. There's a lot of ruralness in the Southeast, but there's a lot of very sophisticated business that goes on here. And I think when you go to the other big cities throughout the country, there is very little appreciation or recognition of that, and that would be the stereotype that I'd like to help break over time in the Southeast. We're a data and analytics platform. The foundation of our platform is obviously consumer transaction data. We've done two really special things with that. The first is we've created a unique native channel, similar to Facebook, where you can advertise to customers in their banking channels when they're thinking about their money. You know, when people go to online banking and mobile banking, they're going there to see how much money they have left in their account and to try and decide if they can afford to buy a pair of shoes or go out to dinner. It is a great channel to advertise to people, unlike other channels where they're going there to post pictures or check on the status of their friend's party last night. So this special native channel that we've created, aggregated across 1,500 banks in the United States, is one of the many reasons advertisers really like who we are and what we do. We also have this unbelievable data asset where we see all of consumers' purchases, and we can use that to help advertisers both present content in our native channel as well as influence the content they're presenting everywhere else, and specifically help them measure the content and target the content. I think the best innovation comes from customer demand. And I think there's a lot of innovation happening out there that has a real need and a real demand. And then I do think there's innovation out there happening that the demand's not quite there yet. But it all has to start with a customer's need. And the customer can be, you know, an individual consumer, or it can be a large business. But innovation has to work backwards from somebody either has a problem or something just doesn't work as well as it should. It could be so much better. I think most major industries are ripe for innovation, and they're ripe for disruption because they've been doing things the same way for so long. And my poster child, probably a lot of people's poster child, is someone like an Elon Musk, who completely disrupted the automotive industry and essentially the US government and the space industry with NASA. Most people would have told him he was crazy, and yet he went in and he disrupted these two major industries. And so I think if innovation works backwards from there is a need, it's a consumer need or a business need, and we can fundamentally completely rethink how something works, that's real innovation. And I think that's going to just continue to accelerate because there hasn't been enough of that kind of fundamental disruption across all the different industries that are out there. I call those near-death experiences. Every young company that goes into a big company has them. And we've had our fair share, believe me, of near-death experiences or crazy experiences. I mean, they've ranged from everything to the very first meeting we had with Bank of America. As we were driving there, my car caught on fire. and we had to, frantically figure out a way to get there on time, and made it just by the skin of our teeth, and our hair was singed because the car caught on fire, to, everyone has the example of when they barely made payroll or were a day and a half away from missing payroll, to the example of, one of our very first banks that we were going live with, which was contingent for the next round that we were about to close, called us up at 11:30 at night, and the technology, of course, banks have cycles, release cycles, and you have to get in that window, and if you're not in that window, it's another 6 months before you're in, and they called us at 11:30 at night, and the cycle was supposed to go in at 2, and they said, there's a problem, and, you have the panic, oh my God, and literally at 1:37, we figured out the problem and solved it, but we were literally minutes away from not launching the bank and therefore not getting our next round. I mean, dozens and dozens of them, and it's, what I say to people all the time is, to be an entrepreneur, you have to be part crazy, because you will have near-death experiences, and you have lots of them, and they really show what you're made of. But you have to be a little crazy to be okay with to be able to get through a near-death experience and come to work the next day and say, it's all good, we're fine.